If you keep exotic animals long enough, you're going to have this problem of maybe 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 times one of your exotic pets getting loose in your house. We're talking about this topic in this video. Let's get it started. You're watching Day or Night X. X is for exotics. And on this video, we're talking about escaped exotic animals in your house, in your home, in your car for some people. I'm going to break it up into a little bit of a segmented theme because this has happened to me with numerous animals. I get this question all the time, so I thought I would address it in a video about my experiences with it and how I prevent it or try to prevent it, and what do I do once it's occurring, once it's happening. So obviously, this is a topic that could range from a very happy ending and a very unhappy ending, right? So I'm gonna preface this video by saying I have had this experience happen to me before. I'll put a link in the description below to probably one of the best happy ending I've ever had, and that's with my pastel ball python, a female named Pammi. I put a link in the description. You go down and check out that video about her escaping and me ultimately finding her. Make a long story short, I forgot to lock her lid. She got out and she was gone for quite a bit of time. Like I said, check out that video. I won't waste your time here. I've had tarantula escapes. I've had leopard gecko escape. That's only happened to me once with leopard geckos. Most of the time it's with tarantulas and ball pythons and corn snakes as well. In regards to these animals, every single time this has happened, it's been my fault. Every single one of these instances was either due to ignorance on my part, beginner mistakes that you make, laziness, or just overall bad luck, right? Bad luck factors into anything. What you want to do in this situation, if this happens, now I'm going to start with tarantulas. So your tarantulas got loose in your house, what do? I'm going to give you a quick story. The very first time I got a P. Metallica, a Poecilotheria Metallica, it looks like this. This is my very first one, and it was the reason why I wanted tarantulas. One of the reasons why I got into the hobby is because I wanted a Poecilotheria Metallica, a Goody Sapphire Ornamental, very, very bad. And I'll put a link in the description below to the very first video I ever did with it, explaining this exact story. It's years ago. But what happened was, I made this custom enclosure by taking a mini critter keeper, flipping it on its side, and kind of giving it an arboreal setup. So instead of it being elongated, it was up. And I'll put a picture right here of what I did. I did a tutorial on how to do it, prepping for this tarantula. Get the tarantula home, get it out, everything's fine, put it in the enclosure. I wake up the next morning. Now, mind you, Poecilotheria Metallica values have not lessened in the years. It's one of the ones that have kind of remained constant as far as values. Its price tag's gone up a little bit, but not as much as some of the other tarantulas out there. This animal cost me, with shipping, it was almost 150 bucks for an animal that was 3/4 inches to an inch. And I wake up the next morning, I go inside, I look at the enclosure. I would say she at the time, it was a he, was not in there. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I hadn't had it 24 hours. I hadn't had it 16 hours. And my wife walks in the room and she goes, look. And I look up and he's on the ceiling, just chilling, stationary on the ceiling. I take a cup, put it up there. Severely lucky. Had she not walked in that room and looked up, I never would have seen that tarantula. But in no way, that tarantula would have been lost in that house probably to this day. And I had moved a couple of times since then, so somebody would have got a nice surprise when we moved out of there if that tarantula could have ended up making it. That's my tarantula experience, and there's been other ones. My Psalmopoeus irminia, got it home. First second, as soon as I opened up the little container, she comes flying out and runs off and runs up to my bed sheets. Took me an hour, tore my room apart. I looked down after about an hour and a half. There she is, just sitting calmly beneath my feet. And I got her. So all of my tarantula escapes have been happy endings. All of them I've found, which is crazy. And there's been a few of them, but those were tiny ones. The Psalmopoeus irminia was about an inch. And I was a newbie at the time. I was still learning how to gauge speed of tarantulas, how to set up enclosures. The reason why the P. Metallica got us because I left too big of openings in the little slits in the critter keeper, and it just slipped right out like it was no problem. So I had to glue all that shut and got that taken care of. And then the most important thing when you have these things happen, learn from them and don't make the same mistake again. And I haven't. Each one of these instances that happened, that was instances, I added like 25 extra S's on that word that were completely unnecessary. And try not to make the same mistake twice. For leopard geckos, I'll make this section short and sweet. They're probably the least flighty ones that will try to get out. I mean, I can leave the enclosure open a lot of times for half the day, and I'll come back and they'll be sitting there. Especially my African fat-tailed gecko. She won't move she just won't move. Same my bearded dragon. If she gets out, I already know where she's going to be. She's going to be laying on the back of the couch. So we literally leave her lid open sometimes. She'll just get out, crawl over her little, some stuff that she crawls over. She just lays on the back of the couch. She has no desire to go anywhere else. Now, I don't recommend free roaming of house with animals. I don't do that with any of my animals. I don't have any animals free roaming the house except the dog. We don't even let our bird out that often because it's just, I don't like the risk involved in it. Leopard geckos only have one time. I actually had an enclosure that had an opening in it that I had cut open. I don't even know why this had an opening in it. It was just like a little holding container that I would put the leopard gecko in while I cleaned his cage. And for some reason it had a big enough opening in it. And I decided that night, because again, being lazy, sometimes you get lazy. I'm like, well, I'll just keep him in here tonight and I'll just put him back in the morning. Because it was such a messy job, and I was like, I'll just leave him in here for the night. And I came back the next morning, he wasn't in there, and I'm like, where the hell is he? And I look over to the right, he's actually sitting on the cage that I was too lazy to clean that night. He's actually sitting on top of the cage, looking at me like, could you please clean my fucking cage so I can get back into my hide? And, you know, he didn't run or anything. He could have been anywhere. And this is back when my reptile room was in my basement, and, you know, the walls were tarps, so obviously tarps are not concreted to the ground, so they can just go right underneath the top like it's nothing, which we're going to get to in a second. Yeah, but it was an albino leopard gecko, the very first one I ever got, just sitting right there on top of the enclosure. I was too lazy to clean that night, and that's the only time I've had an escape with that. And again, that was my fault, and corrected the mistake. Never happened again with any of my leopard geckos. So that brings us to ball pythons, which is where I've had the most scariest ones. Now we will get to corn snakes, which is, I'm trying to go from like happy endings to like going down to the bad stuff, because with my corn snakes, not so lucky. Ball pythons, I had a butter that got out one time, and I don't know how he got out. I don't know if I forgot to close the lid, or it was in a tub. And I don't know if he pushed himself out so much where he actually just got out. I don't know how he got out of that tub. I still to this day do not understand how he got out. But he got out, looked for him for hours, could not find him. And I happened to look, and this is when I had my fire belly toads. I had a big 20-gallon fire belly toad tank with about 4 fire belly toads in it. And I look inside the tank, and they're all in the water with their eyeballs looking out. And I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? They never do that. They're always just like, you know, so I'm like, why the fuck are they all just sitting in here, bouncing around in the water? And I look over, and they're all eyeballing the butterball python, which is inside of this tank. Somehow got in behind the light, and crept and pushed the light out the way, moved the lid, and slid down in it, and was literally hiding in all the foliage that I had in there. Like, blending in like the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World. Just literally, I'm like, what the hell? And the only reason why I saw him is because the butters have a lot of white and yellows on it, and the enclosure is like earth tone, obviously, so he just was like, boom! You know, it's like, when he appeared, he was just like, wow, how did I not see that? And the poor frogs are sitting there like, get him out of here before he eats us. And I should have taken a photo of it, but I was like, let me just get him out of here and get him going. So, because it was one of the funniest things. It would have made some of the best memes. I mean, it was weird looking to see those frogs just sitting there looking at this snake. It was amazing. I'll never forget that. I never made that mistake again with them. And I also had to secure my fire belly toad tank. My Pastel Pammi has escaped on me twice. And she escaped on me maybe like 10 minutes. I was actually in the room when she escaped the first time. She loves to move. She's always out. This is why I don't film her. A lot of people ask about where she's at. I don't update her often because she's very hard to film. She's a bit nippy, especially when she's hungry, and even when she's not hungry, she's still, you know, even when she's full, she just has a tendency, everything's about feeding, you know, and it doesn't matter what, her whole life is based around, let me get out of here so I can go find food. And I'm working on her. She's getting a lot better with it, but she's always been like that since she was a baby. She's always been like that. So she actually got out. Like I said, I won't waste too much time detailing it because you can go down in the video description below. You can see my whole reaction to finding her not in there to when I found her in that video. So you go check that out. But I ended up just putting out a little. She was escaping my basement where, like I said, I had tarps up, and she just went underneath it. And the basement, it wasn't a finished basement. It was just a basement used for storage, you know. So it was just littered with stuff where she could hide in. And night after night, I would look for her, and I could sense stuff that had been knocked over. There was a pile of poop one time, so I kind of traced her tracks. She was trying to find her way back to the room. I knew she was. That's the warmest spot. She knew she wanted to go back there. I ended up putting a little tub with moss in it and a water dish. And I came down one day, and she was actually in it. You know, so I was like, okay. She actually sent it out, and I would swab it because she was so hungry. I would swab it with like frozen mouse. When I was feeding the other animals, I would just kind of get the scent of it in there, and I knew it, and it let her right back in there. So that's a little trick that I do. I don't know if that will work on, obviously, tarantulas and stuff, but with ball pythons, there are some tricks. At least with ball pythons, it's only worked on ball pythons for me, so I can't recommend this trick for anything else. You can put a tub out with a little bit of moss, spray it, so it gets a little bit of a scent to it that's not like the surrounding things in your house. Now, this wasn't a basement. I don't know how this would work. I've never had an animal escape on me outside of that tarantula in the room, in my bedroom a couple times. I never had an animal loose in my house, like around sinks and tubs and bath and bedrooms and stuff like that. So this worked in the basement, and it just happened to work out. Tip was just, just kind of try to find her little spot that was as close to where she was used to as possible, and she found her way back to it. And her attitude changed. Wherever she went through that week, changed her a lot. She used to be really sweet before that. Ever since then, she's been the version she is now, which is kind of, she's a little bit of a bitch, and it's like literally night and day. And again, I addressed that in the video. She's literally like completely different. She was never the same. She used to be very sweet before that. The saddest part of it all, and that is the corn snakes. I had 2 corn snakes that were babies that escaped to me. One of them, huge mistake on my part, had an enclosure with air holes that were too big, and and when I mean by too big, these things were tiny. And that little baby found his way straight through it. This was a while back, and she ended up, I never saw her again. I mean, she was like this big. I mean, she was teeny, just straight out the egg, Never saw her again. And I had another snake, a corn snake, that got loose on me, and it basically was the same deal. You just got out, and I just never saw her again. They were just so tiny, you just never see them again. So I would say that about animals that are really teeny tiny. Make sure those holes, make them as small as possible, because those, especially the snakes, they can get through them, man. Especially when they're that tiny, they can get through them. And so you don't want to get too, big with your air holes with that if you're a beginner. Just keep them as small as you possibly can. And if you think it's too big, it's too big. You know what I'm saying? So you'll know when it's perfect. Just add as many of you can if they're small, Or get an enclosure, buy an enclosure that's made for them. And that was a mistake I made. I have not made that mistake since. So again, the theme of this is it's going to happen. If it's going to happen, you have enough animals. At a certain point, it's going to happen, and you learn from it, and you figure out all the steps you took to making a mistake, and not take all the steps you need to take to correct it. Because ultimately, like I said, in all those examples, that was my fault. So I hope that helps you out. Hearing some stories from somebody who's kept animals a long time, that it does happen. There's no need to be upset about it if it happens. If the animal does happen to pass away, you have to take it as a learning experience, and don't be afraid to get more, because you'll learn from it. It probably won't happen again. There's no guarantees. I could go down there today and there can be an animal out, but I can tell you right now, because it's happened to me so much with almost every animal in my collection, every type of species, I just go crazy checking to make sure they don't get out, because I know that feeling. I don't want to feel that feeling again. It's one of the most heartbreaking feelings of ever, especially when you don't ever find them, like I did with my 2 corn snakes. Never saw them again. And that's heartbreaking, and it's tough, and it's demoralizing, but you just keep going at it, and you just correct the mistakes. And I feel it makes it more enjoyable, because I know now that I know what it takes to make sure that I'm checking properly and how often I should check. And that goes along with checking your animals. Check them as often as you possibly can. If you have a big collection, check them as often as you possibly can. And I try to go, every time I walk past my room, I check. I just turn on the light and I check. I have the room set up so I can do a quick sweep of everything. It shouldn't be like I have to pull something out to check. I can just stand there and look. And if something's odd, I can take care of it. If somebody's missing, I can take care of it. Now, obviously, you go to sleep and you can't check, Before I go to bed, I do a thorough check before I go to sleep to make sure that everybody's safe so I can get a good night's sleep. In the morning, I check to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And I just go about it like that, you know. So hope that helps you. If you are new to Day or Night Exotics, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the notification button if you don't want to miss an episode. That'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one. Be safe, be kind, be you, and be genuine. I'll see you on the next one.